Na 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 na. Ooh, make a change. Thank you. Monks.
How many of us do that? Take a look in the mirror. But do we do it with compassion and kindness? Or do we do it with that judgmental voice? Right? There's this delicate balance that we're always inviting ourselves to walk, right? We're being invited to continue to understand who we are and to grow and to allow ourselves to show up in a different way. And yet, we also have to balance that with compassion. Because if we are always looking in that mirror and all we're seeing are our flaws, anybody in here guilty of that? Then we don't feel as if we have the capacity to change. Can you feel that? That when we focus so much on what we're not, it prevents us from becoming who we actually are. And so there's this delicate balance where we're being asked to be self-aware, and yet we're also being asked to be compassionate about where we are. And I would call this a labor of love. I would call this space where we say, often you hear people say, you got to do the work. You got to do the work. And all of us sometimes think about work as being something that, we go to our job and we think about that being work. We have to take out the garbage and that's work, right? And what I want to invite us into is this idea of work as a spiritual calling. Work as a spiritual calling. So that it's not about a means to an end. It's not about accomplishing something. It's actually about how we are being invited to express our unique gifts and our talents. Michael Beckwith, when he talks about having our structures stable in our lives, he always talks about work as not being how we earn money, but work is where we are our most creative. Everyone breathe into that for a second. Because when we make work a spiritual calling, it means that we're inviting love in. And then work is actually a sacred act. It's something that has a holiness to it, whole, meaning whole. There's a wholeness to it. And that is what enables us to step out into a path of service to the world, right? And I really want to be clear that when we talk about service, it's not about what you do in the world. We're talking about the consciousness that you bring to all that you do. I had a friend when I was in practitioner training, Anastasia, and she was a trader on the stock market in gold. Now, I don't know if you know what that scene is like, but it is every day on the floor, people screaming and yelling and throwing, sell, sell, buy, buy, sell, sell, buy. I mean, you see those things on the movie where it's sort of chaos. That was her daily experience. And yet she was bringing the consciousness of her understanding of wholeness to what it was that she was doing every day. She was changing the experience, not just for herself, but all of the people that she was on the floor with were like, I feel energized at the end of the day rather than exhausted. Because she was bringing something to the work. And it almost feels antithetical, right? Oh, I'm going to bring my spiritual practice of stillness and oneness and love to the stock floor. But this is what we're invited into. We're invited into bringing love into the places that feel as if they're outside of love. And I love this quote from Winston Churchill: "We make a living by what we get. We make a life by what we give." And I used this a couple weeks ago, and I want to dive into this a little bit more, because there is a big difference in consciousness between giving to get and getting to give. Can you feel that? And we've all interacted with people that we know, and we've done it ourselves, because, we're not separate from anything, where we are giving of ourselves with an ulterior motive of getting something back. Now, the something we get back may be our own sense of pride and accomplishment. The something we get back might be that down the road, we're going to call in that favor. Anytime you hear yourself saying, "I've showed up for that person so many times, and they never show up for me," giving to get. And we can feel that. You can feel when somebody is giving you something because they want something from you, yes? We can feel the energy of that. So what if we're actually in the consciousness of getting to give? That anything that we get in life is not ours, but it is moving through us to be able to share it in a new and transformed way with others in the world. What if everything that you are getting is actually for you to give back to the world in some new and creative way? So this is where the creativity comes in. What am I getting to give? Can you feel how that shift in consciousness creates a completely different mindset? And you can feel those people that they just show up and there is nothing they need in return. They are just showing up. That's the space that I want to invite us into. Because what service does is it really embodies the principles of oneness, right? Like there's no separation. If I'm in service to you, to the greater community, to the greater world, I'm actually still in service to myself. But I'm focused on the interconnectedness of us all. I'm focused on how we're actually a part, an individualized piece of this great tapestry that is life itself. Mahatma Gandhi says, the best way to find yourself is to lose yourself in the service of others. So wherever it is in your life that you're like, I don't know who I am in this. It's an invitation to be in service, because it's through our interactions with each other and with the world that we actually have the truth of who we are reflected back to us. But if that reflection is distorted by a sense of, what am I going to get? What am I going to get? Then we're not seeing truth. We're seeing a distortion of who we are and a distortion of who everyone around us is. So the invitation is to move from me to we, right? To move from this egoic sense of self to the fullness of our divine nature. And that invites us to be the embodiment of love in action. And if I had to narrow down what unity is all about in like one sentence, which, trust me, is really hard to do, I would say that we are being invited to be the embodiment of love in action. And everything we teach and all of our spiritual practices are all about creating the space so that we can embody the truth of who we are more fully and more powerfully and more joyfully and more freely. So, what that asks of us, if we're going to move from me to we, is that we have to commit to the reality of oneness. We are so committed to the reality of duality. We have to commit to the reality of oneness. And that means that the thing you see or the person you recognize that just doesn't feel like it has anything to do with you at all. Our political situation in the United States is a perfect example right now. It's not real. It's not real. There is no separation. There is no exceptions. Whichever side of the spectrum you fall on, the other side of the spectrum is not an exception. When we're the embodiment of love in action, we get to actually live more fully into our values. What do you actually value? What is important to you? Is community important to you? Can you live into that? Is freedom important to you? Can you live into that? Is joy important to you? That's one of my top values. How do you live into that? And you have to be willing to grow. And this is the place where we get stuck. We want everyone else around us to change, and we want to stay exactly the same. But we're all evolving and growing. So we have to be willing to grow past whatever it is that we're thinking is true. We cannot grasp the allness of truth. We can catch a glimpse of it. We can catch a hint of it. We can catch a corner of it. So from that corner, from that glimpse, are you willing to catch another glimpse of it? Are you willing to see something more of what there is for you? And that means that we have to step out of our comfort zone. And that makes us very uncomfortable. But we have to step out of our bubbles. I honestly think that where we are in the American political landscape is because of the bubbles that we are all in. Self-referential bubbles. Because what we're being invited to be is a space of inner and outer transformation. We're being invited to do the inner work, the labor of love that's inner, and then we're also invited to do the outer work. And I think that's the hardest part, to really step into time and in space in a new way. Because all of this is just about expanding your capacity for love. Can you feel that? That you have to grow in your capacity for love. So Mother Teresa, it's not how much we give, but how much love we put into giving. We know only too well that what we are doing is nothing more than a drop in the ocean. But if the drop were not there, the ocean would be missing something. Because I don't know about you, but it's overwhelming sometimes, yes? Like little old me, and it's never little old me. We are a divine being. We want to access the wholeness that we are. And yet, we are not all built to be Mother Teresa. That's not necessarily our divine purpose. But does that make your divine purpose any less valid? Any less impactful? Any less important? No, but we diminish it. We think, oh, you know, what am I going to do? I'm going to go knock on a few doors, or I'm going to pass around a petition, or it's not really going to change anything. Well, guess what? That is a self-affirming prophecy. We are being invited to step into something more because there's a collective impact at work here, right? Our advocacy, our support, our actions, they have far reaching impact that you may never see. You may never actually see it, because it might have a far-reaching impact 20 years from now, right? You may never see it. Does that make it less valid? Does that make it less important? No. So consistent, small acts of love and commitment contribute to a larger shared vision of a more just, compassionate, and equitable world. The key word in there, consistent. Consistent. It's not a one-off. It's not, oh, I did that one thing. It's that consistency, because that's our, can you feel how that's our practice? The consistency, having the discipline, having the devotion, having the follow through, right? To be able to consistently show up with small acts of love and commitment. And when we're operating from an awareness of love, those small acts of love and commitment actually rejuvenate us. They don't drain us. When we're operating from the wholeness that we are, not from our fear, not from our doubt, not from our anxiety, not from our worry, we actually are resourced continually. But when we're choosing from fear, we get run down and tired. When we're choosing from our worry and our anxiety, even if it's meant with the best of intentions, right? Somebody tells you something that they're going through, and that worry for them rises up within you. The work that we get to do, that inner work we get to do, is to say, my growth right here. I am going to see this person as whole. I am going to know that they have the capacity to navigate all of this, even if they don't think so. And when we reflect that back to people, that is when they are transformed. We've talked a lot about breaking up the victim, rescuer, persecutor triangle here, right? Can you feel how when I see your wholeness, I have immediately broken the triangle? If I see that you somehow don't have enough to navigate this, what am I going to want to do? Rescue, right? I'm going to want to step in and make it all okay for you. That is not what we want to engage with. We want to know our wholeness and the wholeness that is everyone around us. And they may not like that. They may not like that. Has everyone in here had a moment in their life where you wanted to be rescued? I have. Right? Please rescue me. Please solve this for me. Please make this go away. Please make it okay, because I'm overwhelmed. But the most impactful experience I ever had was coming to a prayer chaplain with full-on victim consciousness and having them meet me with my wholeness. It was like a cold plunge. It just shocked my entire system. And it took time for me to learn how to live into it, but it woke me up. And I was loved on my journey from victim to creator. I was loved by everyone. I remember once somebody was reading Palms at Agape, and she was like, oh yeah, I can show you your divine purpose line. I don't know anything about it, so I'm sure I'm garbling this completely. And I said to her in complete honesty, I don't have a divine purpose. Because that's how I felt. I felt so lost that I didn't know what I was doing or why I was even here. And she just looked at me and patted my hand and she said, there are no exceptions. And I was like, because, we like our victim consciousness, right? Fix it for me. Make it, tell me my divine purpose, right? Solve this for me. She didn't even engage with me on that level. Notice for yourself how you show up for the people around you. Are you trying to solve their problems? Are you trying to fix it for them? Because that's not your job. Our job is to show up and see and know the love that everyone is, to reflect that back to them again and again and again and again. And I am living proof that that gorgeous reflection of wholeness shatters any opposition to the truth of who we actually are. Because we have a global responsibility too, right? So our sphere isn't just our home or our community, but it is the entire friggin' planet. Can everybody just breathe into that with me? There is nothing happening on this planet that is not part of our responsibility. And by responsibility, I mean the roots of those words. Able to respond. We are able to respond. But if we're coming from fear and lack and not enoughness, then it just feels like work without the love. But if we're coming from wholeness, then we are constantly resourced and renewed. And the biggest piece around this is that we have to educate ourselves. We have to get out of our bubbles. We have to challenge ourselves. For me, TikTok is how I do that. I have all kinds of creators on TikTok that I'm like, wow. And the minute I feel myself sort of going, I'm like, put that person add them into my scroll. Because the things that challenge me are how I get to grow my understanding of what other people are experiencing. How many people in here know what's happening in the Congo right now? Genocide on a level that is just unimaginable. I would not have known that if I hadn't been finding people on TikTok that allow me to have a better understanding of what people here in the United States, the pain that the community is in right now. We cannot separate ourselves from any of this. And I know it's hard. I know it hurts. But this is why I call it a labor of love. Because with love, truly all things are possible. And so we have to keep opening ourselves up. We have to keep challenging our assumptions about what the world is and how it works and what it looks like. We have to be willing to act from a place of empathy and compassion and courage. And sometimes it doesn't even matter if you don't get it. Just accept it. Does that make sense? If you're struggling with pronouns, it doesn't matter if you get it or you don't get it. It just means be respectful because that's what this person has said they want to be called. Is it really that hard? It's actually not. The only thing that gets in the way of that is the story we create, our own attachment to our own narrative, and the desire to force everybody into our narrative. Would you want to be forced into somebody else's narrative? I mean, this is what we're talking about, the wholeness that we are. There are no pronouns in God, folks. I mean, it's true. So can we, in our human existence, can we be respectful? I mean, does it really cost us that much? I'm seeing, because, there's a lot of conversation going on right now about gender-neutral bathrooms. And, my favorite response to that was somebody was like, has anybody here ever used a gender-neutral bathroom? And somebody was like, haven't you used one at home? I mean, we all have gender-neutral bathrooms at home. But we've created this narrative that all it does is disrupt. All it does is create otherness, right? Can we grow beyond that? It's part of what we're responsible for. So here's the hardest part of it all. We can sit here and we can listen and we can go, oh yeah, that's a great idea. And then we go around, I'm guilty of it too, go out into the world and do exactly the same things I've always been doing. So the first one, in terms of how we can practice this, is first and foremost, you just have to show up in the world. I know it's a scary place sometimes, but if we don't show up with our understanding of love and interconnectedness, if we don't show up with people, with the awareness of people's wholeness, if we're hiding that truth because we're too uncomfortable to engage the world that wants to say, no, you are other. If we are too uncomfortable to do that, well then, guess what? The world isn't going to change. There's no magic wand that all of a sudden elevated consciousness of wholeness and oneness is just going to descend on everyone. It has to happen through us. So we have to educate ourselves. We have to be, the things that trigger you, that's where you need to go educate yourself. If you're like, well, whatever triggers you, you're seeing unhoused people on the street, that triggers you, go do some research. Go educate yourself about what that is and how that problem is so tenacious and what is actually happening and how people are trying to solve it. If we don't educate ourselves, we are literally remaining part of the problem. And then we actually have to volunteer. We actually have to show up. You actually have to sign up for something. I know, post-COVID, nobody wants to sign up for anything. We have to show up. We have to step out, even if it makes us uncomfortable. I know that we got a lot of introverts in this community, and I know that talking to random strangers can be absolutely, literally terrifying. Can that be part of your practice? Can that be part of how you get to grow? This person who I'm interacting with isn't separate from me. This person who I'm interacting with is me. Can we learn how to quiet whatever anxiety and fears are arising? And we have to be an advocate for change. We have to continually say yes to change, because as I say, shift or get dragged. Change is inevitable. It is going to happen. So if you are resisting it, you will just get dragged along. We have to be an advocate for change. This is a place of empowerment when we're advocating for change. When we get dragged by change, guess what? We're a victim. Look what the world has done. How many times have we said, look what the world has become? I see myself. I'm like, oh my God, I'm getting so old. I'm like, back in my day, and I stop myself. I'm like, no. This world is a better place than it was back in my day. It is. Are we free of problems and ills? Of course not. But this world is absolutely a better place than it was from back in my day. And then the biggest piece is we have to grow and build relationships outside of our little sphere. We have to reach out and create connection with people that we might not normally hang out with. We have to be willing to step into that place. I used to work for Ginny Mancini, Henry Mancini's widow, and she was an incredible woman. She really was. And the thing that impressed me about her, amongst so many other things, was she was 86 or so when I was working for her. She was in her 80s. And she had friends across every generation. She hung out with 18-year-olds, and she hung out with 98-year-olds. She had this entire gamut of community that she interacted with that was constantly forcing her to reevaluate, to grow, to shift, to understand something in a new way. This is the place where we get to be in service. Do you see how when we show up for others, they're also showing up for us? It's this reciprocity. And then through it all, we get to anchor love. We get to meditate. We get to practice affirmative prayer. We get to be self-aware and notice what's arising within us, and when we're being reactive, and we do a quantum living worksheet so that we can grow and change in a new way. And then the last piece is that we have to devote ourselves to being in service. We have to make it a priority. Is it a priority in your life? Where does it fall in the scale of your priorities? And if nothing else, just do something, right? Something, anything, do something. Because this is the only way that we are going to create a world that truly works for everyone. So we have Charles's quote, which I don't know anything about zeal whatsoever. And when I first read this quote, I was like, oh, wow, I love Charles. I fairly sizzle with zeal and enthusiasm and spring forth with a mighty faith to do the things that ought to be done by me. So there's discernment in here. All the ills of the world do not rest on your shoulders. But the things that are yours to do, and you know what they are yours to do. They are yours to be. And that zeal and that enthusiasm. So you know how I said you need to be devoted to being of service? Devotion is one of the aspects of zeal. Can you feel how those link up? If you're enthusiastic, if you have a lot of energy, then you can be devoted to something. And that's that commitment piece. And that is what we are all being invited into, to be the place where change and transformation is actually happening, both within us and in the world. And that we welcome the labor of love, that we welcome it, because that is what makes us an active participant in the evolution of consciousness. Shift or get dragged. It's really up to you. But if we enter into it with devotion and zeal and enthusiasm and love, there is nothing that is not possible. So let's take this into a time of meditation, shall we? And we started this service by just looking at our hands, and I just want you to look at your hands again. Because these hands are here for a purpose. You exist in time and space for a reason. How open are your hands? How open is your heart? So as we just close our eyes and breathe into this space that is love and infinite potential, just allowing whatever is surfacing for you to just rise up. The resistance, the enthusiasm, just allowing it all to be present. Maybe there's some fear or worry. Maybe there's some excitement, energy. And just allow it to all be right now. We can hold multitudes. We can hold all of it. And as we breathe and we quiet, as we feel our hands, maybe within a hand of our own, just knowing that it is through our yes, through our willingness to evolve and grow, that the world is transformed. So let's just rest here for a few minutes with the open-ended question of what is mine to do? What is mine to do. And as we continue to listen to what is ours to do, I just would like you to set an intention for yourself right now. That you will keep listening to how you are called to show up in the world. And in this moment, I want to invite you to just concretely one thing that you are going to do. One small, committed act of love. And just see yourself following through on that act of love. See yourself being impassioned and enthusiastic, and allow yourself to feel the support that is the truth of your life for any way that you are going to step out and show up in the world. And just opening our heart in gratitude for the wisdom that we are, for the love that we are, for the hands that we are. Knowing that we truly are here to sizzle with zeal and enthusiasm. With a mighty spring stepping forward in faith to do the things that should be done by us. And so it is. Amen. Ashe.